So a few months ago, I took a look at every retro game in the Mario series and pointed out what I believe to be their worst elements. But because I'm literally 6 years old and didn't grow up with any of those games, I didn't have much to say about most of them. So today I'm back to discuss every modern Mario game, which I'll hopefully be better suited to criticize. Starting with the best one. YouTube, I'm not actually 6 years old, please don't ban me. Super Mario Galaxy is often called the greatest Mario game of all time, and while I generally agree with that statement, I do have a few issues with the title. The obvious choice for the worst thing would probably be the various motion control levels in the game, specifically the rolling ball stages, but I actually don't really mind these levels. I've always been a big fan of levels in games that almost feel like they're from a completely different game, with my favorite example probably being the Captain Toad levels in Mario 3D World. So while most of these levels in Galaxy certainly can be frustrating, I'm completely fine with the few that are in the game. But I guess I do have to pick something to be the worst thing, so I'll go with the underutilization of power-ups. Mario Galaxy features 6 power-ups, and while 2 of them are from previous games, those being the Superstar and Fire Flower, most of them are fairly in-depth power-ups that do more than just add a simple attack ability. Even the Fire Flower is different than previous games, giving the power a time limit to use it more as a puzzle element than a weapon. But with all these cool abilities added to the game, most of them are only used in a few levels, the most egregious of which being the Red Star, which is used in 1 level, as well as the hub world. This power-up lets you fly for a limited amount of time, and could have been so cool if there were sections where you fly between small planets dodging aerial enemies, but instead they went through all the effort of implementing it just to leave it for the end of the game, and to barely even use it then. So in the previous video, I said that my least favorite aspect of the first new Super Mario Bros. Game was how little it used its headlining power-up, the Mega Mushroom. But luckily, its sequel, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, doesn't even feature that power-up. Instead, it has a much better gimmick, 4-player co-op. This was really cool at the time and fulfilled one of my biggest wishes for all the previous 2D games in the series. The mode worked really well and helped the game sell as well as it did. But when you actually started playing it, the game didn't actually seem particularly well designed for it. Sure, it worked well enough with just 2 players, but once you got to 3 or 4 players, it just felt like too much for the level design. This is the reason that so many games have a separate campaign for multiplayer, but since this game didn't, they tried their best to design the stages to work for any number of players. But in doing this, they kinda created this in-between experience, where in multiplayer, the levels feel just a bit too cramped and chaotic, but in single player, they can sometimes feel too big and empty. However, the solo experience is still really well designed, and the chaos of the multiplayer makes this a great party game. One thing that I think often goes underappreciated in games is the hub world. I always loved how comforting they can be to keep going back to throughout the game, and how they can visualize your progress throughout the game with new buildings and areas that can bring you to new levels of the game. And if there's one game that perfected this, it has to be Super Mario Galaxy. Rosalina's Observatory in that game is such a wonderful little world that contrasts perfectly with the epic stages of that game. It felt like such a welcoming environment whenever you opened the game with all the Toads and Lumas running around, and that aspect only got better as you progressed and opened up more areas of the ship, and all of this paired flawlessly with one of the best video game songs ever written to create what, in my opinion, is the perfect hub world. So you can imagine how I felt when I launched Galaxy 2 for the first time and saw that the hub world was a head. Like literally a giant green Mario head. Like, why not make it a Luigi head at that point? So this was kinda cool, I guess, but it was just so basic looking, and was a lot smaller than Rosalina's Observatory, which wasn't even that big in the first place. Another thing that sucks about it is the way it takes you to levels. You literally just press a button and get taken to a world map, like literally any other Mario game. In Galaxy 1, there were all these cozy little buildings called domes that each represented a specific world, which was one of my favorite aspects of that hub. So this is kinda pushing it as my biggest issue with the game, because this hub does have some advantages, like how throughout the course of the game various NPCs from different galaxies join you on the ship, giving it slightly more character over time. But what I really care about is atmosphere and integration with the gameplay, and this hub fails severely at both. I've heard people talk about the boring era of Mario, specifically when referring to the Wii U and 3DS generation. And while I do really like all of these games, I can't help but agree that most of them are at least thematically pretty uninteresting. And in my opinion, there's no game that encapsulates this better than Super Mario 3D Land. At least for now. Before 2011, 3D Mario had a reputation for providing revolutionary, epic adventures. But because of the huge success of the new Super Mario Bros. Series, as well as the still limited power of handheld consoles, the 3D Mario for the 3DS was gonna be a bit different. The initial hook of 3D Land, or Super Mario Bros. 3DS as it was revealed as at E3, was that it featured the Tanuki Mario power-up from Super Mario Bros. 3. This was pretty cool at the time because of a huge recent gain in popularity for the classic 2D Mario games. However, its reliance on existing material already showed that this likely wasn't going to be the most unique Mario game. And if you've played this game, you can probably agree with that statement, at least a little bit. Everything from the level themes to the music in 3D Land feel very reminiscent of the new Super Mario Bros. Games, as well as taking some aspects from the retro games in the series. And because of the incredibly linear format of these levels, this essentially felt like a 2D Mario game in 3D. But I can personally forgive these issues because this was the first original handheld 3D Mario game, and the game works really well with the DS form factor. So this is where this video is gonna start getting a bit repetitive. In 2012, 2D Mario was in a pretty good place. We had just gotten New Super Mario Bros. Wii 3 years ago, which on top of the first New Super Mario Bros. Game, showed a bright future for the series. But I think most people back then could agree we were ready for something brand new. The whole point of the New Super Mario Bros. Series was to reintroduce the world to 2D Mario with pretty basic level designs and mechanics. So the hope was that the following games could start featuring more out there ideas to help push the gameplay and theming even further, kind of like what happened with 3D Mario. So what did Nintendo do? Well, they released a brand new Super Mario Bros. Game, which featured the gimmick of a lot of coins. That's it. And to be honest, there's not much else to say about this game. It has pretty good level design, and no new power-ups outside of variations of existing ones that just give you coins when you use them. The only hope now was that the next 2D Mario game would be a little more interesting. Yeah, you know what game comes after this. Okay, to be fair, New Super Mario Bros. U is a very good game, and it does have many more new ideas than the previous one. The individual level mechanics are really good in this game. The Mario World-esque connected world map is pretty cool, and the extra modes, specifically the very challenging extra challenges, are great. But the main issue is exactly what you think it is. Almost every aspect of this game that would have been praised if it were brand new were instead taken directly from the previous New Super Mario Bros. Games, specifically Wii. But yeah, New Super Mario Bros. U is a good game, but it again is just too derivative of the previous games, which is a pattern that will hopefully start to slow down now. Nowadays, Super Mario 3D World is considered to be a very good game. It has solid multiplayer, great level design, and a phenomenal soundtrack. And while it is a lot more boring thematically than it could have been, it's definitely a big improvement on 3D Land, and especially the new Super Mario Bros. Games. But when 3D World released, it was a big disappointment for many. As with me, most people were starting to get a little burnt out on the Mario series as a whole. There were just too many games that were focused on sanitized, simple gameplay with multiplayer family fun. So many hoped for a return to the classic collectathon style of 3D Mario for the already dying Wii U console. But when Nintendo revealed this game, it was clear they had different ideas, which wasn't helped by their absolutely terrible marketing for this game. 3D World's main gimmick is 4-player multiplayer, in a very similar method to New Super Mario Bros. Wii. And while this was cool, any 3D Mario games before this with multiplayer were pretty lackluster, it definitely shouldn't have been the main gimmick in the advertising. It's also just not very good. As I said earlier, the multiplayer does work. It does have similar issues to the new Super Mario Bros. Games, where the level design isn't that suited for multiplayer, but my main issue is that it doesn't do anything more than basic co-op. It's literally just play through the game with other people, with no extra modes, or even individual level modes without making a whole new file. But yeah, this game is great, it just needed something else to be its main thing. Does this even count? Super Mario Run was the first and only mobile game in the Mario series, and while I don't personally consider it to be a mainline game, it's close enough that I might as well talk about it here. I think the obvious flaw with Mario Run is the incessant microtransactions. They're not as bad as some of their other mobile games, which have a lot more microtransactions on top of selling loot boxes, but they certainly are an issue in Mario Run. However, I want to focus on issues with the game itself, so I think I'll have to go with the overall simplicity of it all. As the name suggests, Mario Run is an auto runner similar to games like Geometry Dash or Jetpack Joyride. This was obviously done to make the game playable on mobile without the complexity of on-screen buttons, but I do think it definitely takes something away from the fun of a standard Mario game. A lot of that also comes from the fact that this is yet another game that uses the new Super Mario Bros. Art style, and it also just doesn't really have any new mechanics. I do think that these aspects could have been a bit better, but that still wouldn't fix the limitations that the runner game genre imposes. Alright, that's enough talking about this, let's move on to a real Mario game. Now before I move on to the Nintendo Switch generation of Mario games, I thought it would be a good idea to respond to some feedback on my first video, as well as correcting some points that I've now changed my mind on. I don't want to waste too much time on this, so I'll try to go through these as fast as I can. I originally said that my biggest issue with the first Mario game was its lack of proper multiplayer, but as many people pointed out, bad multiplayer was kind of the standard back then, so while it could have been better, most players at the time were fine with what was there. My example of the Lost Levels unfair game design was the poison mushroom at the start of the game, but I should have given more, such as how some warp zones bring you backwards with no real warning, the regular leaps of faith you're required to do, or the goddamn wind levels. For the American Mario 2, I said that it was too weird and didn't feel like a Mario game, but many people pointed out that at that point there wasn't really a precedent for what a Mario game was, so most people didn't see anything wrong with it at the time. My issue with Mario World was the lack of new power-ups, but I should have taken into account how Yoshi and the baby Yoshis were essentially new power-ups. I mentioned how Mario Sunshine's controls are imprecise. What I really meant was the opposite. I think the game's controls are a bit too tight, but that's obviously very subjective. And finally, I didn't talk about Mario 64 DS because I consider it to be a remake and not a distinct mainline game. But if I had to pick a worse thing, I'd probably go with the lack of proper analog controls. Besides that, most of the comments were just about how bad my microphone was, which is hopefully a bit better now. So let's move on to the first Switch entry of the video. After the somewhat disappointing 3D World, at least at the time, Mario fans needed something exciting to get them hopeful for the upcoming Nintendo Switch generation, and what they got definitely met those expectations. Super Mario Odyssey was, and is, a phenomenal experience. It flawlessly combines the sandbox open worlds of 64 and Sunshine with the sheer epicness of the Galaxy games to create a damn good Mario game. It was not only a huge relief for fans of the classic collectathon style of 3D Mario, but it was almost certainly exactly what the Mario series needed at the time. But with all of this praise, you may be wondering what I don't like about this game. And yeah, I don't really have much. This is a great game. In fact, my only issue is that there's too much of it. Mario Odyssey features 880 unique moons. Although you can get 999, that's its own problem. But only about 124 of them are required to actually beat the game, which as you can imagine, makes many of the rest of them feel pretty mediocre. Sure, most of the ones in sub-areas are great, and part of the fun of the game is finding a dozen simple moons in a row rather than the complex star missions of the previous games. But does that mentality extend to, this one's in a rock, or this one's kinda just sitting there? Why couldn't these be replaced with red or blue coins where if you collect enough of them you get a moon? That type of thing worked fine in previous games. Now you may be thinking that this isn't a new issue for the Mario series. Galaxy 2 had green stars that were hidden in each level after you beat the main game, and these similarly felt a lot simpler than the main stars. But I don't think these were really the same thing. The green stars didn't require any new level design. They were literally just hidden in the already existing levels. And because of that, they felt more like a sort of new game plus thing rather than content integral to the experience, making it more fair to compare them to something like 3D Land's remixed levels or Galaxy 1's Luigi mode. But in Odyssey, the extra moons just make the game feel bloated, and while it's nice to have endgame content, they could have spent that time making more well thought out and good moons. Much like Mario Run, many people do not consider Bowser's Fury to be a mainline entry in the Mario series, either because of its short length or because it was exclusively packaged with another game. But I personally do, and that's why I'm talking about this and not, I don't know, New Super Luigi U. On top of this, Bowser's Fury is one of my favorite Mario games, even with how short it is. So even though I say this a lot, this one was really hard to find something for. The obvious choice would be how much shorter it is than other games. I mean, I have already mentioned it 3 times in the first 5 sentences. But given the context of its release, I am personally fine with that aspect of the game. My main issues with Bowser's Fury come from its boring theming. The game organizes its gameplay into different islands in a large lake, which is a really effective way to incorporate separate feeling Mario levels into one big world. Notice how I said separate there and not distinct. The islands are each one of 3 themes: grass, snow, and lava. These themes do look somewhat different, as in they have different rock colors and obstacles, but because of the surrounding environment being the same in all of them, they don't feel different. All of the beaches feel like beaches, all of the mountains feel like mountains. There isn't much besides those different visuals to distinguish them. On top of that, most, if not all of the shines on these islands follow the same few formats. Complete the area, collect 5 shine shards, use Bowser's Fire to break some rocks, find a key and bring it to the beginning, collect the blue coins on a timer, or absolutely beat the shit out of Shadow Luigi, with the few rarer variants barely feeling different between areas. So yeah, that's another game with the issue of boring theming. Anyways, let's move on to our last game. And finally, we have the most recent Mario game, Super Mario Wonder. The release of this game was great news for 2D Mario fans, as it was the first game to not use the new Super Mario Bros. Art style since Mario Land 2, just under 31 years previously. And by just under, I mean literally by 1 day. At its release, Mario Wonder was praised for its fresh, new ideas, as well as its ability to take inspiration from retro games without feeling the need to rub it in our face like many other modern Mario games. But there's still one issue it shares with those more recent games: the boss fights. In most of the new Soup games, the only boss fights outside of the final one are against the Koopalings, and in the 3D Place games, many of them were against Boom Boom. This was pretty cool the first time it happened, because these were somewhat ignored characters from the later retro games, which were very much the fan favorites at the time. But after like 5 games, it was starting to get old, so thank God Mario Wonder is here to do the exact same fucking thing. To be fair, these bosses aren't actually against the Koopalings, they're against Bowser Jr. Every single one of them is against Bowser Jr. To me and many other people, this was a huge disappointment, especially considering the amazing concept of normal bosses being corrupted by the Wonder effects. Just imagine a Womp turning into an entire building that you have to destroy, or a piranha plant growing giant tentacles that attack you. But unfortunately, it seems like Nintendo just doesn't care that much about 2D Mario bosses, instead saving the good ones for games like Galaxy and Odyssey. But luckily, boss battles are only a small part of these games, and the rest of Mario Wonder is fantastic. Or sorry, wonderful. So yeah, that was the worst thing about every Mario game, in my opinion. I'll show all of them on screen now, as well as the games from the first part if you, I don't know, fell asleep during the video. Feel free to comment your own thoughts on the matter or corrections for any of my points that you think aren't justified. Just remember to be respectful of mine and other people's opinions. We're talking about Nintendo games here, it's not that serious. I'm hoping to do more videos like this in the future, so I'd be happy to see your ideas for what this should be about. And of course, make sure to check out part 1 of this video if you haven't seen it already. But anyways, yeah, that's about it for today. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Unless... yeah, I got nothing.